I say so because Chinta Ravindran's very close connect with EMS. And EMS's very close connect with Jayaprakash Narayan. The person who actually inspired EMS to become a Marxist was actually a book by Jayaprakash Narayan written in 1936 called Why Socialism? This country needs to re-establish that connect. And I'm grateful to the Chinta Ravindran Foundation. I'm grateful to the jury. I'm grateful to those on the podium. I'm grateful to all of you.
And here is a man who is not only brilliant, but equally a man of character and integrity, Mr. Yogendra Yadav. I present him to you. He is all yours. 3 cheers to democracy. 3 cheers to Yogendra Yadav. നമുക്കറിയാം ഈ എക്സിറ്റ് പോളുകൾ മൊത്തം തകർന്ന് തരിപ്പണമായപ്പോൾ there was one person who was standing there and he told us the exact feeling of the people. So I think we must express our gratitude to this person, because that was a single voice which rekindled our hopes in democracy.
Respected chairperson of today's proceedings, Shri N.S. Madhavanji, Mr. Ravindran, Mr. Koya Mohammed, MP Surendranji, Mr. Johnny, and Mr. Onni. I should have said in my remarks 2 minutes ago that sometimes when a cartoonist draws your caricature, that also feels like an award. And therefore, it was very special to receive this award from you today. Friends, I chose to speak today on what does it mean to be left in today's India for a very special reason. It's not merely an academic question for me. It is a political question for me. My own journey is actually from what was not seen as the left at that time. I was a student at JNU in 1981-83 and was part of a socialist group called Samata Yuvajan Sabha, inspired by my political guru, Kishan Patnaik, a socialist broadly of the Lohiyite variety, you would say. I went on to join Samta Sangathan, a non-party political formation in the 1980s, which finally resulted in the formation of Samajwadi Jan Parishad, a democratic socialist organization, broadly you would say, headed by Kishan Patnaik. We were not described as leftists in those days. But of late, in the last few years, I hear myself being described as a leftist. Not because I have changed, because something has changed in the environment and political climate. This description, and funnily, there is an expression which can only be used in India, and which 25 years ago would have only invited a laughter. Left liberal. You know, in the older ideological universe, this expression made no sense. How can someone be left liberal? You can either be left or a liberal. But today you have those expressions. It amused me first, then it intrigued me. I thought, perhaps it tells us something about the nature of our times. And the harder I think about it, the more I feel that this question of what it means to be a left needs revisiting, especially in our times. 2 days ago, I had an occasion to speak in Chennai on the implications of the 2024 verdict. I don't wish to recall all that, but I would just say what Mr. Johnny picked up a few minutes ago, which is, I said the first Republic of India is over. The Republic of India that was inaugurated on 26th January 1950 was over, I think, in 2019. The Second Republic is yet to be born. And we stand today in a no man's land. 2024 election has not taken us to a wonderful Second Republic, but fortunately, it has saved us from the worst nightmare of what that Second Republic could have been. So we have the comfort, a very short window of being in a no man's land. This is a critical moment to shape India, not just for the next 5 years, but for the next few decades. The left can play a critical role in this moment, provided we redraw the boundaries of the community that goes by the name left and reorient this community to the historic task that awaits us. So I'm not just interested in discovering meaning, I'm interested in assigning a mission. You would agree, this is a question of utmost practical and political significance. Let me dispose of two preliminary objections to begin with. The first objection to this question would be, why bother? Isn't the left dead already? This is what you would hear in mainstream media. This is what you would hear amongst people. They say the left died with the demise of the USSR. They would say the left political parties are in a state of terminal decline anyway. Now it's limited to tiny pockets in the country, and you don't know when that might disappear. So, why bother? I have two responses to this. One, I think the presence of the left in today's India is much deeper than the visible electoral presence of the organized left political parties. I have a theory of small numbers. And the theory is that in public life, small numbers play a huge role. I often think about Punjab and Haryana. Punjab's political culture, public culture, is very different, not merely because it's a 6th state. No, that's not the real reason. Punjab's public culture is very different from Haryana's public culture, although both of them originated exactly from the same roots. The difference is not ethnic. The difference is Punjab has a left orientation beginning with Gadar movement, going on to the communist movement, going on to the Naxalite movement, which has transformed not just electorally, you find the communists are almost non-existent in Punjab today. But if you look at the literature of Punjab, if you look at poetry in Punjab, if you look at political analysis in Punjab, if you look at academic work being done in Punjab, it's of a qualitatively different nature that you would find in Haryana. It is the small number, the presence of the left, beneath the surface presence of the left, which has transformed that public culture and shaped it. This I feel in Telangana, although in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, again, the left is electorally almost non-existent today. So one is, the left is not dead because it has a deeper presence. Second, and that's my real point, the presence of the left is the potential reach of the left is much beyond the self-identified leftists. That's a point I would expand upon. there is a left beyond the label left. If we can discover that, if we can connect that, then left is anything but dead. In fact, I wrote an article a couple of years ago saying, left is dead, long live the left. The second objection could be, so the first objection was the left is dead. The second objection would be, why bother about this question? Don't we know what is left? This is the objection from the orthodoxy, which has monopolistic claims of what it means to be left. We stand today in one of the bastions of that left, which would claim the communist left as the only authentic left, the only claimant to this title. And indeed, gradually all other forms of socialist, progressive, egalitarian thinking has given up on this title. I will speak about it a little later. To my mind, this monopoly is at the cost of political marginalization. When a movement is on the upswing, it is natural to fragment and have debates about who is a true claimant. So when I was in the university, 1980, something I referred to, in those days, we had 100 shades of the left, of red. You could be a Congress left, you could be a democratic socialist, you could be a CPI socialist, you could be a CPM socialist, you could be Naxalite, you could be Maoist. In my university, you could also be a Trotskyite. You had 100 shades of red in those days, which is natural. When a movement is expanding, when a river expands, it has these substreams that it forms. And in those days, we used to have those intense battles, one of which I mentioned. One of our first achievement in my university days was that we managed to dislodge SFI from the JNUSU presidentship. And we felt very proud of this. So we fought all these little battles. Those were battles of the 20th century. Battles that have no meaning today at all. Certitude and sectarianism are the two biggest stumbling blocks to a revolutionary's quest. Today, we cannot afford to carry the dead weight of past disputes. That's something I would very strongly urge, especially because I'm in Kerala, where some remnants of those disputes are still carried out. But carrying dead weight of those past disputes is going to get us nowhere. Today, the best we can do is to begin by saying something. Begin by saying something which is actually radical, which is, maybe I don't know. Saying I don't know is actually a fairly radical statement. Why don't we begin by doing that? That we don't know what it means to be left. Let's take a fresh look. And the best way would be to begin by a very quick look at the history of this word. I'll not bore you with historical details. In any case, I'm not a very good historian. But we all do know that this expression left originated in the post-French Revolution National Assembly, when those who sat on the left of the speaker were the ones who were anti-monarchy, very radical Republicans. They were also Democrat in the definition of those days. They were also anti-church. So this bloc was broadly called left. Mind you, they were not socialists, because socialism as an ideology was yet to arrive at the front stage. They were not egalitarians in that sense of the term. This is how the word left began. Gradually, over the course of the 20th century, in the late 19th century, it shifts to the word left becomes coterminous with socialists. And in 20th century, then it becomes limited to communist. Look at the history of the word, of the idea of socialism in India. This is something I've professionally written about, and I hope to write longer one day. But just to give you one snapshot, there are 3 phases of the journey of the idea of socialism in India. One phase is before the Bolshevik Revolution. Socialism is known in India. Marx is written about in India. In fact, the first biography of Marx is written in Malayalam. But people's imagination of what it means to be a socialist is very open-ended. In the official history of socialist ideas, the official historians are embarrassed about this phase because they find they were not proper socialists, because they had not imbibed scientific socialism, because they would mix their own fantasies with what they thought was socialism, because there was a lot of value addition. People thought socialism was this great thing that was happening somewhere in Europe. And then they would put everything. Swami Vivekananda speaks about socialism. In fact, he relates it more to caste inequalities than anything else. Bankim Chattopadhyay writes an essay on Samya. In this first phase, which is roughly from 1870s to 1917, in fact, little later, I would say till 1923, even after the Bolshevik Revolution, it's a phase full of rich imagination. These are not days of internet. And in any case, much of the literature coming from Russia post-revolution is proscribed in India. So this limitation of information leads to flourishing of imagination of what socialism is or can be. It's very open-ended. The second phase begins with, if I were to date it, I would say not with 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, but with the publication of M.N. Roy's book. M.N. Roy, in a sense, closes this open-ended imagination. His book, India in Transition, is actually the moment where you have closure. This is 1923, I think, India in Transition, which closes the doors of that imagination. And M.N. Roy comes with official information. This is scientific socialism. This is historical materialism. This is how you are supposed to think. Stop fantasizing. Stop dreaming. Get proper. This is also followed by the formation of the Communist Party. This, in many ways, is the high noon of Indian socialism. But as I have already mentioned, this is also closure of imagination, where orthodoxy takes over. An orthodoxy which still has disputes. There are varieties of socialism floating in India at that time. There is Nehru. There is Congress Socialist Party. We don't remember these days that the Congress Socialist Party, which was a party within the Congress Party because Congress allowed political parties to exist within itself. Congress Socialist Party, led by Jayaprakash Narayan, which had leaders like Acharya Narendra Dev, Ram Manohar Lohia, Meenu Masani in those days, and which had E.M.S. Namboodiripad for a little while. This party was a Marxist-Leninist party. Don't look at this party from the prism of Bhudan Andolan of 1950s. They were Bolsheviks, Marxist-Leninist at that time. But the dispute with Communist Party was about how to read the character of Indian bourgeoisie and how to relate to Indian national movement. Let me not get carried away by that historical dispute because that's very close to my heart and I've written about it at some length. That relationship between the socialist and communist snapped in the year 1942. There's a story to it, and that is the 80-year-old snapping that I spoke about. 1942, the socialists in India and the communists of India snapped their relationship, never to come back again, with bitterness that actually was almost personal. That was a very serious loss in the history of Indian left thought. But that's not my main focus right now. So we had multiple ways of being left in India, which continued in post-independence period also somewhat. I mentioned the various shades of the left, but much of that ended with 1977, with the demise of the Congress left, the end of Congress-CPI coalition alliance, and the rise of left governments led by CPIM. Official communist left emerged as the only left. And you had the rise of orthodoxy. What was that orthodoxy? That orthodoxy was built on 4 pillars. It told you, if you were left, what is a genuine left? A genuine left is if your theory is Marxism, and Marxism of a certain variety, not just Marxism of any kind, Marxism of a certain variety. If your ideology was communism, and there is a serious difference between Marxist theory and communist ideology. If your model was USSR, and if your preferred vehicle was the Communist Party. This is what the orthodoxy reduced the left to. So we have the truncated definition of truncated, narrow, some people would say authentic and correct, but in my language, narrow and orthodox understanding of what it meant to be left. Now, if this is what is left, there is no doubt that the left has little future left. Communist parties have declined. USSR has collapsed. China is no inspiration, at least not for China, could be an inspiration for aspiring capitalists, but it is surely no inspiration for the left. Soviet system collapsed not just because of its own political system was undemocratic and its economics was deeply flawed, but also because communist system was just one variant of modern European urban industrial society, enchanted with modernity, attached to large-scale production and its technology. Communism turned out to be deeply flawed as well. If the communist political system failed to recognize human quest for liberty, the communist economic systems failed to understand the logic of market and the need for economic incentives. As for Marxism, while it has been the staple of revolutionaries and also the basis for what we today call social science, I think we seriously underestimate this point. What we today broadly call social science is actually based on the foundation of what was once Marxism. All that is true. It must also be said that with hindsight, we can see that many of the claims of the Marxist science of sociology were over the top. Most of the predictions were off the mark, and its claims to monopoly over objective truth were highly suspect. Its application to societies like India also showed another congenital defect of the Marxist theory, its deep Eurocentrism. I'm not here to debate all this today. All I wish to say is that if we want to confine left to that orthodox reading of those 4 pillars that I spoke about, in that case, the left indeed has very little future. But I said right at the beginning that to my mind, there is a left deeper than this orthodoxy. And at moments of crisis, this is the time to think afresh. What really has happened is that we have, you get, in history, you get an idea, and then over the course of history, you put too many clothes on that idea. And then those clothes begin to matter more than the idea itself. This is what we have done to the left. And it's time to take the clothes off and to begin afresh, to say, what does it really mean to be left? So let's go back to the post-revolution France. What was the left about the left at that point? As I told you, there was no Marxism then, there was no socialism then, or at least not as a dominant thought at that point. What made them left was that they dared to stand up to the establishment. Monarchy, aristocracy, religious establishment, various forms of establishment, they stood up to that. So therefore, this anti-establishment orientation of the left naturally progressed towards opposition to or resistance to the biggest establishment of them all, which is capitalism. But remember, it began with that anti-establishment thought. Or let's go back to what makes the left activists stand out anywhere today. Basically, their ability to question received hierarchies, settled equations of power, or the status quo. It is resistance to domination that makes left different, that makes left into left. As the world bends to power, the left stands straight and asks, why? When everyone accepts things as they are and believes that something simply cannot change, the left asks, why not? This anti-establishment, non-conformist, radical stance is at the heart of the left. The establishment may change from time to time. During French Revolution time, the establishment was the monarchy, the ancient regime. It could be capitalism. The establishment could be colonialism, organized religion, nation state, caste order, or patriarchy. Indeed, allow me to provoke you, indeed, the establishment could be the Communist Party, the communist state, official Marxism, or even science. It is your ability to stand up to that establishment, oppose domination, and to ask why. To critique not in the sense of criticism, but critique in a Marxian sense of the term. To ask elementary questions of the assumptions built into any form of domination. To take those assumptions apart and to say, okay, why? That is what makes left into left. If what I'm saying has any sense, then left is a relational concept, not a positional concept. That is to say, left is not about some fixed points or positions. You stand for public sector, you stand for this, working class, a whole series of things. It is not a series of fixed positions, but relative to space and time. Desha and Kala. Desha, Kala, specific, is what makes left into left. Therefore, the left of French Revolution, of Russia in the 20th century, Russia of Putin's time, will be very, very different left. Left in Europe and the left in post-colonial societies will have to be very, very different left. That is something we didn't quite fully realize in India in the 20th century. Left during the anti-colonial movement, left during post-independent days of Congress's dominance, and left during Modi's India will have to be very, very different left. Because you are left of something, left to something, in opposition to something, in resistance to something. And when that something changes, what it means to be left also must change. So, what does it mean to be left in Mr. Modi's India? What is the structure of domination today? If left is about offering resistance to dominance, we must begin by asking, who dominates? Well, my expression itself contains an answer. Modi dominates. You can go one step behind and say, all right, BJP. Or someone would go one step further and say the RSS. Modi's personality, BJP's politics, RSS ideology is the dominant political force today. But to be left is to ask a different question. Not just who dominates, but what dominates. And once we ask that question, we begin to open some hidden structures. Political hegemony of the BJP conceals deeper structure of dominance. BJP, Modi, RSS, these are the outer facade of a deeper structure of dominance that we see. I quite like the word Modani for that. It is a bit of a political rhetorical word, but sometimes political rhetoric contains very deep insights. The word Modani actually captures it all. We are looking at a structure that contains multiple forms of dominance. There is the political dominance of the BJP, sustained through brute state power, sustained through an election machine, sustained through money, media, and everything that we get to see. There is a strong majoritarian streak, a dominance where you can virtually declare minorities to be second-rung citizens. So there's a brute majoritarian dominance. There is also dominance of the caste order. There's Brahminic dominance, not the dominance of the Brahmins, but dominance of a certain caste order, caste system. And therefore the repeated invocation of the word Sanatan is not quite an accident. Because in the 19th century, invocation of the word Sanatan and Sanatan Dharma was actually meant to oppose any attempt to reform Hinduism and to cure it of its caste order inequalities. So we have dominance of Brahminism and we have dominance of crony capitalism. The kind of brazen rule of capital that we see today is something that India has never witnessed in the past. And I keep joking with my friends that when we were in the JNU, when Indian state indeed had a lot of autonomy vis-a-vis capitalists, we all said Indian state is nothing but an agency of the bourgeoisie, which was not quite true at that time. And today, when Indian state for all practical purposes has become an agency of the bourgeoisie in a very straightforward sense, we have lost that theory. We don't talk about it anymore. This is the most brazen rule of crony capital that India has ever witnessed. And we, of course, have authoritarianism. So we have political dominance of authoritarianism. We have social dominance of Brahminism. We have majoritarian dominance of the religious kind. And we have crony capitalism. We have multiple forms of dominance that we witness today. Left has to be left of all this. It is in resistance to this that the left must be created. The left must stand up. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone who opposes Mr. Modi or the BJP should be called left. That, of course, would be ridiculous because there are all kinds of forces. There is a subtle line dividing the anti-Modi camp. There are all kinds of anti-Modi, anti-BJP forces which have done well, and we should be grateful that they have done well. But it's also a moment to realize that there are two kinds of forces within that. One which is not left, which is not the ally of the left, cannot be brought under the umbrella of left. The other, that must be brought under the umbrella of the left. There are those who offer only political opposition and electoral contest. They are opposed to the dictatorship of Mr. Modi. They are opposed to the dominance of BJP. And many of them are opposed to the majoritarian politics of BJP. They are not necessarily left. This is opposition, important opposition, and we should do everything possible to strengthen this opposition. But that is not what I would call left. There is another part of the anti-BJP camp in the country which opposes deeper structures of power that he represents: economic, ecological, social, and ideological. Those who believe not just in a power shift, but in a deeper transformation. Historic task of the left today is to build a new social bloc of the bottom of the pyramid. Because what the BJP has done, if Indian society is like a pyramid, BJP has managed to almost capture the top half of this pyramid. Look at it in terms of class, look at it in terms of caste, somewhat in terms of gender, but mostly in caste and class terms. BJP has almost fully monopolized the upper half of the pyramid. And from the bottom half, BJP strategically manages to take a few slices away, which is how BJP has manufactured a majority. The historical task of the left today is to create a social bloc of the bottom of the pyramid in this country. Bottom of the pyramid understood in terms of class, in terms of caste, in terms of gender, in terms of religious minorities. And this bottom half is not 50% of India's population. This bottom half is perhaps more than 80% of India's population. And the tragedy of anti-BJP politics is that BJP can manufacture a majority beginning with 20%. And the anti-BJP forces have failed to manufacture a majority starting with a potential 80% vote share. That is really the historical challenge and the task here. So, politics of radical democratic republicanism has to be the politics of the left today. Radical democratic republicanism. Radical and democratic we would understand, but I should clarify that the word republicanism has nothing to do with the formal political science definition of the word republic, where it simply means opposition to king. There is no monarch in India, even if someone pretends to be. There is no monarch here. Republicanism here is understood as something that goes back 500-600 years into the European tradition. A claim of equal citizenship, which in fact somewhat connects us to the legacy of Ganatantras in ancient India. I will write more about it, but just wanted to flag the word republicanism. So republicanism, which is about creating a community of equal citizens, democratic, both in defending democracy and in accepting democratic constraints. Those who do not believe in democratic means cannot be part of today's understanding of what is left. And radical in the sense of those who want to take it forward, not be constrained, take it forward to its logical end. To put it simply, I said right in the beginning that we are at the end of the First Republic of India and at the beginning of Second Republic, of whose shape we do not know. And what we are going to witness in the next few years is an intense battle for what that Second Republic would be like. The BJP's intents are quite clear. Please do not be under the illusion that 2024 election has given them a final knock. One thing that you can be reasonably sure about Mr. Modi is that he will not preside over the withering away of his regime like Mr. Manmohan Singh did, BJP would do everything possible in the book, outside the book, whatever, to regain, to snatch power back. So BJP knows the kind of second republic that it wants to build. That is Savarkar's republic, a feasible version of Hindu Rashtra that it does. We all know about it. I will not go into the details of that. What kind of a second republic do we want to build is a question. On the one hand, there are those who would think about going back to the First Republic. There is a lot of nostalgia about Nehru's days, about Nehru's republic, about those days of democracy. To my mind, this is neither possible nor desirable. We simply cannot go back to that republic. A second republic will have to be reconstituted. Do we simply want to regain, or do we want to reconstitute? To my mind, to be left today is to create a political bloc, to create a political force that is about reconstituting a new republic. A new republic which offers a defense of democracy. This is going to be a very large camp. This camp will not just be communists, as must be quite evident. I must also say that not all communists may qualify to be in this camp. This will not just be socialists, and once again I would say, not everyone who calls themselves socialist may qualify to be in this camp. But it must include all those working for annihilation of caste, against the destruction of ecology, all the defenders of the republic and the Constitution. I want to underline, and this has been my discovery, something that Johnny mentioned in that article, that one of my discoveries of traveling in 2024 is to realize how widespread is the support for democracy in this country. Those of us who occasionally feel, I don't know if you do that in Kerala, but in North India, many of us occasionally felt so completely helpless in the face of this onslaught of the BJP RSS. But having traveled, I'm absolutely convinced that resources to take on the BJP RSS are very deeply embedded in our society. The problem is that they are not part of the official opposition. The opposition parties, the official left, the orthodox left, all that captures only a tiny slice of the left available in this country today. It is available in people's movements. It is available in the upsurge of the farmers. It's available in the upsurge of the Bahujan and Adivasis and Dalits. It's available in the extraordinary resistance put up by Muslim women against the CAA. The resources available for this resistance are very widespread. They are also available in the form of constructive work being done for alternatives, in environmental and ecological struggles happening all over the country. These are sources, these are potential sources that are available to all of us. There is a lot more that we can add. Today is not the time. And I'm in that sense skipping over something that I wish to write at length at some point. But let me conclude by simply saying, there is so much that we can draw upon if we want to reconstitute this left. We can begin with internal resources. And one of the first steps of the internal resources will be Marxism itself. Marxism, not of Lenin, but Marxism of Karl Marx himself. That is still an intellectual repository waiting to be understood, waiting to be used. as a method rather than a set of political doctrines that have been imposed upon it. We can learn from practice of communist revolutionaries. I often feel that the practice of the left has been much ahead of the theory of the left. And if only the theory could be recast in the light of the practice, we would be much ahead. So these are internal resources. There are what I call neighborly resources, resources that have always been available to the left, which have not quite been used. There is the democratic socialist tradition, extraordinary thinkers like Ram Manohar Lohia, Acharya Narendra Dev, someone who called himself a Marxist till the last breath, Jayaprakash Narayan, that entire tradition, which culminates in someone like Kishan Patnaik. There is the tradition of Phule and Ambedkar. There is the tradition of Indian women's movement and Indian feminist thought. These are neighborly resources. We should also be open to using external resources. What are those external resources? Gandhi. Good old Gandhi is still available for radical republican democratic politics in our country. Not merely his ahimsa. Gandhi has much more than ahimsa to offer to us. Resources of environmental struggles that I have mentioned, and also theories of decolonization, which have sometimes been relegated to the camp of the right. But it has genuine radical potential that needs to be recovered and brought into the left. And finally, let me refer to one resource that is available to us all, and that is the Constitution of India. Someone said, where is the left? If you recall, there was a debate during this election about redistribution. Congress said something, and BJP jumped. The Prime Minister said, they are talking of redistribution. The BJP President, Mr. Nadda, in a formal interview, says, without batting an eyelid, this was said in Hindi, ये लोग समानता की बात करते हैं, ये माओइस्ट हैं. Clearly, Mr. Nadda hasn't read the Constitution of India. There was a debate on redistribution. Clearly, they have not read the directive principles of state policy, which clearly ask concentration of wealth to be controlled in this country. All this is part of Indian Constitution, no Bolshevik ideology. So, where should we go for inspiration for building the left? May I suggest, following what you mentioned, that preamble to the Indian Constitution is a pretty leftist document. Maybe there was a time when we thought nothing of the Indian Constitution. I must confess that when I was a student at JNU, all of us thought this was a pretty routine, if not useless kind of a piece of paper. You know, some lofty words were written there. Who takes these things seriously? And then BJP constituted a commission for review of Constitution. We took out a rally. And then I met some of my old JNU comrades in that rally. And we said, isn't this the document that we used to joke about? Times change. So must the left. And the beginning can be made with the preamble to the Constitution. The left has a very deep legacy to draw upon and a great future to build upon, provided we are willing to rethink what it means to be left. Thank you very much. Thank you.